Hi, I'm Chad Bettis, author of The Disciple Making Parent, and this is my audio blog, where I read some of my blog posts in audio format for your convenience. In today's episode, we're going to think about the question, why don't we invite input? You know, I've observed a strange parenting phenomenon. Many parents are reluctant and even resistant to asking advice about their parenting. While others can see blind spots, the parents themselves remain, blind to them. Often older parents or pastors are hesitant to mention anything for fear of being accused of being a busybody. And this is not new. J.C. Ryle once admitted, "I would rather correct a man about anything than his parenting." This came up because recently I received this email from an older leader in another part of the country. Over dinner tonight, my wife and I were discussing some of the interactions that we've had with parents of young children in our church. Our goal has always been to encourage and try to give biblical counsel. But based on our discussion with each other, I suspect that you and your wife have tried to do the same thing, as well as other older parents. But it's a bit interesting. We've kind of come to the same conclusion that it seems some are reluctant or even resistant to take our advice in the realm of discipline. Now, I've wondered why this may be, and I've come up with a few theories, and here were his theories that he put in an email to me. Some feel that their circumstances are unique and different from our generation. Some may be wrapped up in the teaching of secular psychology. Some may fear being labeled as abusive by the world. Some may be trying to gain friendship with their children. Some may just not be willing to admit their inexperience. And some think it should be easier than it really is. Well, I think his speculations are actually spot on. And in fact, I'd add three more. One reason that we don't invite input is we have a church culture that does not teach people to ask questions. Now, this is an ongoing observation that's larger than parenting. Modern discipleship strategy places all the burden on the more mature Christian, so we're told to go disciple someone. However, young Christians are not taught that they are disciples, that they are learners, and learners need to actively learn and ask questions. We find Jesus sitting in the temple and asking questions of the teachers. This lack of active learning is a larger church culture issue, and I don't expect it to change anytime soon, but it can change little by little. So if you're a younger Christian, actively seek out older Christians and ask questions. If you're a church leader, train your younger people to do this. So that's the first reason. It's a church culture that doesn't teach people to ask questions. I think we should be asking questions as young parents. Number two might be pride and lack of wisdom. You know, over and over again, Proverbs tells us that a wise person asks advice, and a fool is wise in his own eyes. So can we rephrase that? A wise parent asks advice. A foolish parent is wise in his own or her own eyes. You know, insecurity can fit under this category as well of pride and lack of wisdom. Our security should be in the gospel and our identity in Christ. Unfortunately, it's common for parents to find their identity in their children. So as a result, admitting any mistake strikes to the core of their identity. But, you know, this blindness doesn't apply to parents only, but to lots of roles. You know, I've seen new lay elders enthusiastically jump into their roles without asking, how should they grow in wisdom and skill in this new role? You see, often we don't know what we don't know. God brings situations into our lives so that we will grow in wisdom and in understanding. So sometimes it can just be pride or lack of wisdom. And a third reason, perhaps, that we don't seek input is what I would call post-consumption reinforcement. What do I mean by post-consumption reinforcement? Well, social psychologists have made an interesting study of how people choose between products and how they think afterwards. For example, if they're asked to rate how much they like product A over product B before they purchase it, they might say, well, I like product A, it's about 60 to 40 better than product B. However, after the purchase of product A, then they might say, yeah, no, it was a 90-10 difference. Why? Because we all want to believe we made the right choice. Similarly, once parents have had to make choices about anything, sleep training, discipline, educational choices, etc., I mean, we could go on forever. It's harder and harder to admit that we may have had a mistaken idea. We may not have made the best choice. After all, what's more important to us than our children? It's one thing to admit that we made a bad choice about an automobile or a phone. It's another to admit that we've not made some good choices with our children. Well, I see several applications that fall from this question. Number one, I'd encourage you, seek parenting training before you need it. Get ahead of the curve. Have a game plan before the game starts. Of course, it'll be adjusted and you'll modify it, but don't start on this important journey with no roadmap. And if you're a church leader, make every effort to train your parents before they need it. So number one, seek parenting training before you need it. Number two, be humble and teachable when you're in the middle of parenting. Invite correction from those who know you best. Be willing to admit that you've been going down the wrong road and you need to make some corrections. Or just be willing to admit that you need some advice. We want to value obeying the Lord more than what people think. We want to be teachable and humble, inviting input. Ultimately, we trust in God's good sovereignty. Barring some sort of abuse, we're not going to mess up our children. If we stay humble and teachable, the Lord will direct us on this journey through His Word and through His people. Today's podcast can be found at thedisciplemakingparent.com. Let me encourage you to visit the website for more resources to help you as you seek to pass the gospel to your children. And I would like to ask you a favor. Would you please leave us a rating or review for our podcast? That helps out so much and helps others find our podcast. Well, thanks for listening and have a great day.